Hi, okay, so today we're going to read Leave Me Alone. And the author is Vera Brosgol. Do you all remember what an author is? Like, what does an author do? An author writes the story or the book. They write the story or the book. And in this case, Vera Brosgol is also the illustrator. So what does the illustrator do? If the author writes the book, the illustrator does the pictures. So Vera wrote the book and she drew the pictures. Do you know what this first page is called? This is called the title. And then we have the title page, Leave Me Alone by Vera Brosgol. Once there was an old woman. She lived in a small village in a very small house. Do you know what a village could be? A village is a group of houses where people live close together. So it's kind of like a neighborhood, which you all probably live in. With a very, very big family. Look how many people are in that house. How many do you think that is? If you count, it's going to be 30. She has 30 people living in her house. Winter was coming. That meant she had some very important knitting to do. Have you guys heard of knitting before? Knitting is when you use yarn. So these are balls of yarn that she has. And you have two chopsticks and you twist your yarn together until you make a scarf or a hat or a sweater or whatever you want to make, but that's what knitting is. That knitting was not getting done. Look at all those kids. They are in her way. Her grandchildren were very curious about knitting. Were you supposed to hit the ball with a stick, maybe? Can you eat it? Yum, yum, yum. Could you make your brother eat it? Ooh. Why did the ball get smaller and smaller as you chased it around? The old woman was at the end of her rope. Now you see that her yarn ends right there, which would be the end of her rope. But do you think that that means anything else? What do you think that that could mean? End of the rope could mean that the old woman she's done with the nonsense. She is over the craziness and she wants to be alone. She's at the end of her rope. She can't take it anymore. So she made her bed as neatly as she could. She swept the floorboards until they more or less shone. She drank tea from her samovar. What is a samovar? I've never heard of that before. It's this thing right here, and she's drinking tea from it. So what do you think maybe that could do? A samovar is a decorated teapot. That's what holds her tea. She packed up her things in a big sack, and as she left, she shouted back, "Leave me alone!" You see her over there? She's got her sack. She is going out of the house. The old woman walked through the deep, dark forest. She made a fire so that she could see what she was doing, and she sat down and began to knit. But the bear family was very curious about the light from the fire and even what she might taste like. Yummy. So the old woman shouted, "Leave me alone!" Those bears didn't listen though because they don't speak English. So the old woman picked up her sack and she left. The old woman climbed up the mountainside. It was so cold, so she found a sheltered place to stay warm. Then she sat down and began to knit. Those mountain goats were excited to have a visitor though, especially one that brought snacks. Those are silly goats, don't you think? Those are not snacks, those are balls of yarn. So, what do you think the old woman shouted? Say it with me. "Leave me alone!" But those goats were too busy fighting over the red ones, which they all agreed were the best snack. So the old woman picked up her bag and she left. That old woman climbed higher and higher and higher up the mountain until she reached the top. And you know what she did when she reached the top? She climbed to the moon. Do you think we can really climb to the moon from a mountain? What do you think? While she was on the moon, she found herself a rock shaped just like a chair, which is perfect. So she sat down on it and she began to knit. But the little green moonmen had never seen a woman before, old or otherwise. They examined her with handheld scanners that went beep boop, beep boop, beep boop. Say it with me, say it with me. Beep boop, beep boop. Oh, look at her. She does not look very happy. Those moonmen are crazy. Leave me alone, she shouted. But those little green moonmen couldn't even hear her because they don't have ears. So she picked up her sack and left through a wormhole. Where do you think she's going? What's a wormhole? Where do you think she's going to go on the other side of that wormhole? Let's see. The void on the other side of the wormhole was very dark and very, very quiet. She was absolutely, completely, utterly alone. And it was perfect. What do you think she will do now that she's alone? She's finally alone. What will she do? Let's find out. Soon, she had no more yarn and 30 little sweaters. Who could those be for? She was all alone. So she put her 30 sweaters into her big back sack and swept the void until it was nice, matte black. She had a cup of tea from her Samovar, which is a decorated teapot. Then she picked up the sack and left through another wormhole. Where's she going to go now? When she came out of the other side, everything was right where she'd left it at home. And she didn't say a word. Look at her right here in this picture. How do you think she feels? She looks happy. She's got a smile and she's with all of her grandchildren. She's showing them her sweaters. Have you ever felt like that before? Have you ever felt happy? That is the end of our book, Leave Me Alone by Vera Brosgol.